All right. Good evening and good night, and welcome to the It's Your Perspective Talk Show. It is Thursday, October 15th, 2015. My name is David, a.k.a. Kimba, a.k.a. Christian. No co-host tonight, so I'm just holding down the fort by myself. I just want to say that this is the It's Your Perspective Talk Show every Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, weekly at 8 p.m. We do have a telephone number, 340-201-9005. You can also text us on that number as well. Most importantly, you have to go to our website, streaminglivefromthevi.com. That's our website. Go to that website via your smartphone, your Android, your Apple, your iPad, your Mac, or your Windows PC. Open up your browser and just click on that website, and you'll be seeing the show tonight because we do have a special guest in the studio. I'll tell you who that is just in a second here. We do have email, streaminglivefromthevi@yahoo.com. If you want to send us an email, you can sure use that email address right there. We are in a high-tech, low-tech studio. Our guest tonight does know that. We're still streaming live from an undisclosed location here in St. Croix, Virgin Islands. No radio, no TV, internet only. Check out all our recorded live shows on YouTube and Ustream.tv. I just want to say to our guests, and I'll tell everybody who our guest is in a minute, but I just want to say to our guests that after tonight, guest for right now, I'll just say the guest, we're going to have 200 shows on YouTube.
Whoa.
Yeah, so we're rolling along here. Like us on Facebook, It's Your Perspective Talk Show, and streaming live from the VI.com is our Facebook pages there. Definitely want to give a shout out to CHS class of 1982. Vanessa, Julie, Sharice, and Roshima Quiet Storm Smith. Thanks for helping us out with the show in the past. And most importantly, to all our past guests, thanks for helping us out and coming on our show and being a part of what we're trying to do here. We're on Twitter. Tweet with us. We're still moving straight forward and up. Show's mission is just to inform, entertain, and empower everyone. And definitely want to give a quick shout out to our two sponsors tonight, Magdalene's Party Decor. If you have a wedding, baby shower, bridal shower, anything along those lines that needs any kind of decoration, indoor or outdoor, Magdalene's Party Decor can help. Let me just put up right here some stuff that she has. Take a look at that. Something that she did there. I'm not exactly sure where that is, but just nicely done, and everything looks like it's just totally synchronized in place. Here's another one here. Another event that she did, just beautiful and totally in sync. And here's another one here, a third picture here, something that she has put together. And she does all this stuff by hand. She gets all the supplies and just hooks it up.
Exquisite.
Yeah. You can reach her at 340-690-0420, 340-690-0420. That's how you can get a hold of Magdalene's Party Decor. And I also want to give a shout out to other sponsors, Supersonic Computer Services. You have a virus, need a new hard drive, you have a small network you need set up. Check these guys out. Their email address to get a hold of them is yourpcisdown@yahoo.com. Send them an email, and they'll be surely willing to give you a hand there. And moving along here, my cheat sheet here says introduce the guest. And I just want to say welcome back to our very, very special guest here, Virgin Islands author, Gary James. There he is, Gary. Wave to the crowd. You're streaming out right now.
Thank you, my brother. It's great to be home.
Yeah, man. Thanks for coming back. Gary is starting his season 2, is sort of how we're going to coin that.
Absolutely.
Coin that. And so real quick, Gary, you took a little summer break there. And so what's been happening real quick?
Oh, it was gorgeous, man. And right now I'm in the midst of promoting my latest book release.
Okay.
Black Politics 2.0.
Okay.
So I'm going to be doing some radio interviews. I expect the first of next month to be on the Mario Mohead show.
Okay.
And a few other people. So I'm pretty much excited about that. This will be my first appearance on local radio.
Okay.
So you pretty much got my feet wet here from our undisclosed location. So that should relax me.
Okay.
So I'll be able to enter the radio studio and just deal.
Just deal with it, right?
Yeah, So thank you, my brother.
Okay. So welcome back. We're starting. Gary's going to be doing starting today. Every other Thursday, he will be here. I don't know, maybe 12, 14 segments, I guess.
Yeah, we're going to have about 12 or 14 segments.
Okay.
And we're going to primarily deal with politics.
Okay.
You know, politics
lovely subject.
Yeah, it's a great subject these days. And as you know, next year's presidential election in the States.
Yes.
And next year, of course, is senatorial election here, so the legislature will be engaged in their re-election, and I'm sure there'll be some insurgent campaigns as well. So there's a lot going on in politics. So we're going to get down with that and talk about some politics, because that's one of my fortes. I have an interest and colorful experience in electoral politics throughout my sojourn in New York City. But now I'm back here, or home for the first time, here in the Big Island. From 2009 is when I located. But I have a particular affinity to the Big Island because my father was born here in 1922, and he, along with my grandparents and aunt, migrated to New York City in 1925, along with a host of other Virgin Islands who constitute what some call a great migration. So they never returned, but I did my 70. So I returned to do some research on my family ancestry and so forth. And I was absolutely blown away to learn how deep my roots are here on the island. And I was equally blown away to learn that what I knew of African American history was just a drop in the bucket compared to what I didn't know about African American history vis-a-vis the Virgin Islands, and in fact black history in terms of the whole Caribbean area and the role that it played over the centuries in terms of the African diaspora, the trajectory and process or procession of enslaved Africans from the continent to the Caribbean and the mainland, North and South America. So this has been really an interesting time for me, and I was able to, find some time between my research and discovery to write a couple of books. In fact, my first book was released in 2013, entitled Transfer Day. And it talks about my family ancestry, as well as things like Transfer Day, Emancipation Day, Contract Day, Liberty Day, D. Hamilton Jackson, Caspar Holstein. All of these names and occurrences were completely over my head. So when I came here and began the research, it was quite a revelation to me, along with finding out the extent of my family roots. So I was able to reduce that into a book that was released in the 2013. But more recently, in November of last year, my second book was released. My second book that I completed since I've been down here. My second book, Black Politics 2.0, was released, and that is the book that I'm marketing particularly at this point. But as the new year comes in and we get to Black History Month of next year, I have an engagement to discuss both books at a college in Florida, Broward College, who invited me to come down and make a presentation on during Black History Month. Mm-hmm. So I'm looking forward to that, as well as I'm looking forward to continuing to engage conversation with you, my brother,
okay,
and the audience here at It's Your Perspective talk show.
That's it.
Politics, as I said, is on the agenda pretty much everywhere, and I'm going to focus on politics in the Virgin Islands and New York. Obviously, many of us know the connection and affinity, which I just alluded to, between the Virgin Islands and New York. And in fact, during that great migration, many know that the vanguard of the Harlem Renaissance, those individuals were primarily from the Virgin Islands here. So there is much to be learned about the history between the states and the Virgin Islands, and the integrity and character of the individuals who in fact were the vanguard and did tremendous things, and whose shoulders we stand on today as we speak. So we're going to talk about politics, and by way of full disclosure, the 2012 and 2014 election was the first time that I participated in electoral politics here in the Virgin Islands, and it was indeed a revelation, and nothing was resolved except that I did vote. But it was very controversial, the results in both instances, the 2012 and 2014. And in fact, the resulting scenarios continue. So that is my general observation and my first participation in local politics.
Politics, yeah.
And I must confess, I am still on the learning curve, and I'll probably remain there at least for the foreseeable future. But I participated when I registered. I made sure that I would register as a no-party registrant, because I'm familiar with party politics in the States from both sides of the aisle. In fact, my extensive and colorful experience involves political activism on both sides of the aisle, from the 1960s, when I was a professional organizer during the civil rights movement, to the 1980s, when I became an activist on the Republican side of the aisle. And so I had a colorful career on both sides of the aisle, and I maintain political relationships in New York vis-a-vis the organizations that I deal with, I'm associated with, and I consult with. But I realized that I should get involved in politics from the standpoint of the process as opposed to the partisan aspects of the different parties. And I was in fact surprised to learn not surprised to learn that there's a Republican and Democratic Party down here which predominate the politics. But I was surprised to learn that the party politics in terms of the policies and positions are pretty much the same here as they are in the States. And I was surprised at that because there is a unique culture here in the States, but it's not reflected in the politics. So, and then apart from the unique culture, which is obviously much different from the stateside culture, a major difference is the fact that here in the Virgin Islands, the population is majority and overwhelmingly black, whereas in the States, black folk, African Americans are a minority, a considerable minority, maybe under 20%, likely under 20%. So there's a difference in terms of that dynamic, minority, majority population. But the fact that the politics is the same is perplexing, particularly because from my experience, the politics in New York, the party politics is dysfunctional. And the black leadership in general can be characterized as dysfunctional as well. And I was really intrigued to learn that the same analysis, the same assessment can be applied here in the Virgin Islands. The political parties are essentially dysfunctional. And, the political leadership, the elected officials, or political officials, elected and unelected, leave a lot to be desired in terms of the quality of leadership. And that was a mind blower because, as I said, from my initial research, I've learned that the earlier black leadership in the 20s up to the current period, these guys had some serious integrity, had vision, had a whole lot of stuff that seems to be pretty much missing at this point. But we're going to talk about politics, and I mentioned party politics because we're going to talk about party politics, but we will not talk about local political officials, and we'll confine our conversation about local politics in terms of the process, where the parties are, and where we are with respect to how we do politics, because that is something that we need to consider and perhaps reconsider. So let me just mention a couple points Next year is the election in the VI and the United States, and a compelling argument can be made that the election in the VI has already begun. And I note that there seems to be a lot of positioning going on among the elected officials. But I can't comment further on the positioning because I don't know the players and I don't know the history of the personalities that are currently engaged in the process. So I'm going to leave that alone, other than to suggest that I wouldn't be surprised if while next year is the senatorial election to the legislature, 2018 is the next gubernatorial election. And I suspect there's some moves going on right now to position some folks or not to position some other folk on as a candidate, or potential candidate in the next gubernatorial election. But it's going to be interesting for me to remain on the learning curve and see what's up and continue to do my thing. Because I said I'm interested in politics, and while I'm not going to engage in partisan politics or personality politics as it currently presents itself here, I will engage in the process as a whole and make some comparisons between what's going on in the Virgin Islands here and what's going on in the States. But I would just mention that I have an organic, I alluded to it, but I have an organic relationship with St. Croix politics, because when I relocated here and began doing research at the Wim Great House, I learned that my great-great-grandfather, Johannes James, was born into slavery in 1825, and he lived on the State Hermitage and worked as a cooper, the maker of barrels. And what I found particularly interesting in the records was that his parents, my great-great-great-grandparents, Helena and Adam James, lived on the estate as well. But according to the records, they were unbaptized, which would suggest that they came as adults. So I don't know if they came from another island or whether they came from Africa. But I'm in the process of continuing my research along those lines. And I was pleased that a couple of weeks ago there was an article in the Daily News which indicated that the Danish government is going to make archives available on the internet. So I will have an opportunity to refrain from going to Copenhagen and check out the information on the internet with respect to Estate Hermitage and the people who own that and the records that may be there for me to examine. So I have a strong affinity and connection to the VI based upon the fact that my DNA was established here in 1825. So I have an abiding connection to the future of St. Croix and the Virgin Islands. And my children and grandchildren, who haven't been here as of yet, I owe them the information that I'm developing, and I owe them a path to at least provide some options for them with respect to not just my legacy, but where they come from and the opportunities that may be available to them in the future, in a future Virgin Islands. So I'm excited about being in the Virgin Islands and navigating myself around the territory and learning and contributing to how business is done in Paradise, USA. And as a student of electoral and community politics, it's no surprise that I would examine and assess the political matters in the Virgin Islands prior to my participation in the future elections, and based upon what I experienced in 2012 and 2014. So in addition to the controversial aftermaths of those elections, they have generated some incredible legal scenarios which continue, but we don't know to what extent they will be followed up on. I'm hearing that perhaps we shouldn't expect there to be too much that will be followed up on in that regard. But it is, like I said, an interesting learning curve. But the substance of our conversations as it relates to VI electoral politics going forward, as I said, won't advocate for anyone, any party, or any group of candidates. We'll discuss the process as a whole, and we'll critique both political parties, Democrat and Republican, the process and the structure, because they are obviously different. Although the parties are the same, the structure from which they operate are interestingly different. It's not politically wise for me to advocate against any incumbent or candidate or insurgent candidate. So I can't overstate my reluctance and reasons why I would not do that. But it is important to critique the process in general so we could begin to understand how we could perhaps get more out of the process than we're getting. Because obviously we're not getting too much, because the process is broken. And the scenarios that are currently underway in the states in particular can be looked at, and perhaps we could learn some things from what is going on in terms of the state party politics. Yet, both communities, New York and the Virgin Islands, have stunningly similar political positions. But the paradox between the difference in communities is something that perhaps needs to be examined as to why this is occurring. But my general assessment, as I mentioned earlier, politics in New York, party politics is broken, and the political leaders, elected and unelected in New York, leave a lot to be desired. And so my assessment generally is that political leaders are stuck on politics 101. And the black community, in terms of how we deal with politics, we are also stuck on politics 101. And so that means we can't really blame the political leadership, although it's easy to highlight them for what they have done and what they haven't done. But the fact remains, if we are not, as an electorate, as voting citizens, doing what we have to do, then they won't do what they have to do, and we'll get away with many things, with corruption in some cases, with malfeasance in other cases, or in general, poor political leadership. And that's what we have here. We have in American politics, in the black community, and local politics, we have a situation where the tail is wagging the dog. And the way we've been doing politics, we can only expect for the tail to wag the dog, because our general sensibility is that we come out during election time, vote for our political leadership, and after we vote and they're in office, we're done with the process, and we come back maybe next year if we're not apathetic or disillusioned because of what didn't happen. But the problem is we didn't do what we were supposed to do. And politics, in terms of electoral politics, for the communities that are successful in electoral politics, they deal with politics 24/7, 365. And they don't expect politicians to do what they say. They expect politicians to do what they are held accountable to doing. And black elected officials are not used to be held accountable for their leadership or lack thereof. And the black electorate is not organized sufficiently to take advantage of their position as the bottom line to political leadership. The people have the last word. But if the people are not sufficiently organized to require A, B, C, and D from the politician, it won't occur. And so, generally speaking, our assessment for how we've been doing politics, I described it as politics 101 and we should be doing politics 2.0, we can also say that throughout our political history, talking about the 19th and 20th century, we as black voters have been engaged in emotional politics, politics of a pawn, the participation of a pawn, emotional politics. Politics, that could be equated with checkers, the game of checkers. And what is required is that we play politics in terms of the game of chess. It's two different applications to the game. And so we've been playing political checkers, and we need to play political chess. So now that's easy. That's easy to say. And many of us, whether we play checkers or not, or chess or not, we understand the difference between the two. But let me just develop the difference a little further in terms of just making it a little keen for us to pick up in our imagination and perspective. You can sit down and learn how to play checkers in a few hours. You could be good and be competitive. You can't do that with chess. With chess, you have to learn the different pieces, the names of the different pieces, and you have to learn how they move, because all of them move differently except for the pairs. So you have to learn the pieces, learn how they move, and then learn how to coordinate them on the board in order to prevail against your adversary, the person who is doing the same thing you're doing. See, so you have to outthink them. And the only way you could outthink them is by way of the extent to which you understand, you know how the pieces move, how to coordinate the pieces on the board, and how to defend against the advances of your adversary, and how to be a successful adversary and prevail in endgame. So my point is obvious, that in order for us to play politics the way it needs to be played, we have to approach it as though it is a game of chess, and we have to go to the woodshed, meaning we have to learn some stuff. And that's problematic generally, because we prefer not to learn some stuff. We prefer to learn some ABCs and some fundamentals. Then we're ready to throw down. We're not ready to take it to a higher level, to different levels of voter education, voter application, voter organization, voter sophistication. There is a lot of stuff that we're not doing, which is why, although we are the oldest minority in the United States of America, and still arguably the most numerous, the most populous. I know some say the Hispanics outnumber blacks. I don't buy that. See, Hispanic, we're talking about language, and with black, we're talking about phenotype, we're talking about color. Now, I'm old enough and been around long enough in various parts of the country to know that you can identify some folks who are black as long as they don't open their mouth and start talking. As soon as they start talking, they're not black, they're Hispanic. See? So it depends upon how you want to look at stuff and who's developing the data and for what purpose the data has been developed for and how it is being used. So I hold, as we speak, that black folk are the oldest ethnic minority or ethnic community and the most numerous in America. Yet, black folk, as compared to other ethnic and minority communities, are political weaklings as compared to other minorities when it comes to our political leverage. We got the numbers, we got the timing, but we're still at the bottom of the pecking order. Affirmative action was developed as well as in housing, employment, integration was developed, voting rights and civil rights were developed because black folk were being discriminated against. And that was the impetus for the civil rights movement, to give African Americans an equal footing. And according to the storied successes of the civil rights movement, statutory successes, voting rights, civil rights acts, affirmative action, integration, we are still, black folk, at the bottom of the pecking order. And when we talk about affirmative action, everybody but black folk get the priority. Black folk are at the bottom of the pecking order with respect to affirmative action. Women, white women, get more results from affirmative action than black folk. Obviously, other minorities do as well. So, you know, we've been here, we got the numbers, but we can't break through the glass ceiling. Why is that? Is it because black folks are inferior? We could deal with that. but we won't deal with that tonight. But we can deal with that because that is an important component that contributes to the status quo of black folk in America, and Virgin Islands, everywhere. You see, and so I'm not going to digress, although I'm tempted to digress on the race component because it is pernicious, because it is profound, because there is much being touted about the need for a conversation on race, a real conversation on race. And there shouldn't be race-based discrimination. There should be equality among the races. You know, some people are biracial or multiracial. We're not going to digress on that tonight, but I promise you we're going to touch on that because we have some things to bring up in our conversation regarding race, what it is and what it is not. But we're going to focus, as I said, on the politics and the fact that of what we've just discussed, and the idea that black folk have been pawns in the political process. During the 19th century, when the majority of blacks participated in the Republican Party, because the Republican Party was founded in 1854 as an abolitionist party, anti-slavery, and black folks predominated that party. And as a result, there were many political and economic gains that accrued to black folk in the 19th century that even dwarf the achievements of the modern civil rights movement. But talking about the modern civil rights movement, that was a phenomenon that occurred in the Democratic Party. And what many people may not appreciate as much as I can, because I'm not talking about that period as an observer. I'm talking about that period as a professional organizer. So I was there, and I wasn't a self-proclaimed organizer because I wanted to be an organizer. I was a professional organizer who was trained in the Olinsky method, which Obama touts. But I was trained and I was paid as a professional $200 a week back then. And I was a staff organizer for the National Welfare Rights Organization. And so their contribution to the civil rights period and welfare rights for black mothers in particular is very well documented. But I mention that to say to you that my assessment of that period is based upon the fact that I was there and I was a stakeholder and a role player, so I saw what went down. and the civil rights period was essentially a phenomenon that occurred within the Democratic Party, and it pitted the social conservative Democrats against the new liberal progressive Democrats. And as many know, the social conservative Democrats ran politics in the South. And it was essentially a white supremacist organization, and it was directly associated with the KKK. That's a matter of history. And that is what the Democratic Party was about until white liberals and progressives, seizing upon the political consciousness movement that was occurring among the black community and minorities and student movements, the black, or rather the white liberal and progressives, saw an opportunity to wrest control of the Democratic Party apparatus from the Southern racists by way of engaging blacks and minorities into the political process. And that is how I became an organizer. I was trained by white liberals in the early 60s about the role of an organizer and the role of electoral and community politics. Two different scenarios. But I say that to make the point crystal clear that it was the success of white liberal and progressives that were able to tap in to what was going on the community level and in universities, and with the help of black students and white students to do sit-ins and infiltrate the Democratic Party in critical areas, the liberal progressives were able to, at the end of the day, wrest control of the Democratic Party from the social conservative Democrats, the white crackers, so-called, or they also call blue dog Democrats. And so that is what occurred in the 60s. Blacks and other minorities, along with white progressives and liberals, took control of the Democratic Party apparatus, and those in the party, those racist cats, most of them, except for a few like George Wallace and so forth, most of them transitioned or migrated to the Republican Party. They were called boll weevils. You know, these are terms, these are old Southern political terms, but boll weevils were looking for a home. And so it was President Johnson who made the point that the Democratic Party was going to lose the South by virtue of him signing the Civil Rights and the Voting Rights Acts. And that's what happened. The Democratic Party lost the South and gained all the black folk. You know, but that did not move black folk from point A to point B. What happened is black folk became politically or fascinated with political leadership. Before that, it was about social activism. But once the Democratic Party was transitioned and many blacks, I know because I was there, many blacks were shown a shiny thing and became fascinated with the notion of political leadership and personal achievement, that the vanguard of the black power movement, the black consciousness movement, peeled off into politics. And I'm not naming names except to say that I know all of these, I know all the players. Some of them were a little older than me, but I'm beyond 70. So I was there, and I was a player. You know, I know the leadership of SNCC. First it was Marion Barry. Then it was the congressman. Forgetting who was with Martin Luther King. His name slips me. Then it was Carmichael. Then it was Rat Brown. These are guys in my generation. I went to academic high school in the Bronx. And Stokely went to Bronx High School of Science. You had to be tested to go there. I was not going to take a test because I was living in a neighborhood and I already had a problem because I was scholastic and studious, and I had an academic course going into high school, and my peers would call me X because I had geometry and trigonometry and physics and that kind of stuff. So I wasn't going to be tested, but I had the same kind of experience, and so I interfaced with these guys on different levels. As I said, I was a professional organizer. So my point is that we have been pawns in the electoral politics of first the Republicans in the 19th century, and then the Democrats in the 20th century. And I say pawns because there were fantastic successes that were achieved, but they're gone. All of them gone bush. Because we never really had them in the first place. Because we never really did politics based upon our idea. We did politics based upon how the majority community, how white folk introduced it to us. And when they got what they wanted from the process, as the Republicans, they got ambivalent. They were not interested in enforcing the civil rights of black folk anymore. What occurred? Well, history points to the Great Compromise, wherein we know about what happened in 2000 with Bush and Gore, there was a cliffhanger in the presidential election. Well, that wasn't the first time that happened. That happened also in 1876 between the Republican and the Democratic candidate. The Republican candidate was Rutherford Hayes. And the deal was Rutherford Hayes made a great compromise because the Democrats conceded to give him the presidential victory, but he, Rutherford Hayes, would have to call back the federal troops that were enforcing the civil rights for black folk, called Reconstruction. And so the Great Compromise, in the Great Compromise, Rutherford Hayes called back federal troops, and that began what we know as Jim Crow and Ku Klux Klan and the terrorism against black folk and the black community. And black folk became afraid to vote, and the white folk who were helping them became victims of their white brothers who did not want to see black folk move or progress and advance. So that's what happened. That's what happened then, and that happened similarly during the modern civil rights movement. Because the white folk, the liberal and progressive white folk, got tired of the Southern crackers running stuff, and they knew the crackers was doing the wrong thing to blacks and minorities. And they understood that if they could engage blacks and minorities into the process on behalf of their own civil rights, that would give them, the liberal and progressive, the impetus they need to infiltrate the party. And so that's what went down. That's what went down. Black folk were used in that incident as political pawns, and we got fantastic results vis-a-vis the storied civil rights movement. I'm not romantic about the civil rights movement. I hear what they talk about, what they say about, but I was there, and I know what the movement was and was not. And I know that based upon that movement, we inherited some stuff, some leadership ideas and concepts, and a class of leadership that continues to plague us. Yet we have no apparent way out, because the information that we have been given vis-a-vis political organizing is insufficient. Is insufficient to move us from point A to point B. Hence, the leadership and the fellowship in the African American community is stuck on Politics 101, and for the 21st century, we need to engage Politics 2.0. And in order to get to that level, we have to understand that it's not about checkers, it's about political chess, and there's some homework that has to be done. And so we have to resolve to do some homework. And so that's one of the things that intrigues me. In fact, let me just mention that we have a site that we've developed for public consumption, which is about homework, and it's focused on VI and New York voter education. And that website is accessible at www.voters, VOTERS, Anonymous, ANONYMOUS.com. VotersAnonymous.com is the site that we are devoting to this voter education and application enterprise. And we started up a Facebook page, a Facebook group, and it's facebook.com/groups/Voters Anonymous. So we will be posting on the Facebook group, and we invite others to post and respond. And we want to generate some interactive relationships as we move forward to approach politics, community politics 2.0. And so that's where we're going with that. But how we doing on time?
It is 9:09. So,
Okay.
yeah.
So it's about time to do a wrap, and I thought I would ask because I could see I was getting ready to get carried away, and I'm definitely not going to do that because there is much to talk about, and we're going to follow up with this conversation next week.
Week after.
Or the week after next, the 29th.
The 29th, yes.
And so we'll talk about the emotional nature of our relationship with the Democrats and Republicans. And we'll talk about some other relevant things as well. So let me just leave it there and make the point that it's good to be back.
Thanks for coming back.
And well, it's always inspiring because I like what you and the brother put together here, and it's inspiring to me because I see where you're going. I could appreciate where you're going, and I could contribute to where you're going, and I look forward to doing that. And so we're signing off, and I'm looking forward to following up on this conversation again on the 29th of this month, and then you could look forward to checking us out here on the first and third Thursday of each month. And we will be here to engage with you. And I look forward to some feedback. So ciao, till next time, baby.
All right.
All right, brother.
Arthur Gary James is our guest here. I want to say thank you again for coming out. Gary just started or just completed season 2, episode 1.
That's right.
That's right.
That's right.
And he'll be back in 2 weeks, which will be October 29th, a Thursday. 8 p.m. to 9:15, 9:20. And he'll be here every other Thursday for like 12 to 14 every other Thursdays, which will probably take us into maybe like March or April of next year, I would imagine, right? Something like that, if I do the math right. But I want to say real quick that this is the It's Your Perspective talk show every Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 8 p.m. until. Our telephone number is 340-201-9005. Our website, most importantly, is streaming live from the VI.com. We're in a high-tech, low-tech studio. No radio, no TV, internet only. Give a shout-out to CHS Class of 1982. Moving straight forward and up, the show's mission is just to inform, entertain, and empower everyone. And I want to give a shout out to our sponsors, Magdalene's Party Decor and Supersonic Computer Services. And my name is David, a.k.a. Christian. We'll be back tomorrow night, Friday, October 16th. We do have a guest on the schedule. And so we'll leave it at that. Get home safely. We'll talk to you soon. We're out. Peace.